We're live. Vlog Thursday number 450, which means 10 weeks away from 500, which is a number. It seems like a milestone of sorts. I don't know. I'll let you decide that. Nice to see a few of you here already jumping in the comments early. I have a couple topics, not talks, topics to talk about. The photo, though, let's start there. What was I doing this weekend? Why was Tom... Here, we'll pull it up for those who didn't really see the thing. They changed the buttons on here. That looks like the right button. We will share a screen. There we go. I was at a conference, and that was a lot of fun. Specifically, I was at the Hope conference, and I got to meet people that many of you who are on the other side of the camera here were among you. And so the Hope Conference is a Hackers on Planet Earth hacker community-driven conference founded by the people from the 2600, which I'm a long-time reader. There's just a lot of great people involved in this. And it's not just a conference that I was attending. It became quickly a conference I was part of because of the ability to volunteer. I thought this was great. I volunteered for, well, basically I unloaded refrigerators on the first day, among other things. I was just like, I'm standing around, I'll help you set up the conference, which eventually turned into, hey, we need someone to do some security. And I was like, I know security, maybe in a different context, but also this context works as well. So I became someone there who was helping with security. It was definitely really cool just interacting with all the people there. I have a lot of thoughts about the conference. I don't know if maybe I'll do, and I've been thinking about doing more on my personal channel. And I thought about doing a review of the Hope Conference on my personal channels. I don't know if it's a fit for this channel. I haven't decided. I guess it depends on the content. So yes, I was it was in NYC. So I was only there for the conference. I was not there much extra. I came in on Thursday. I thought I would have more free time Thursday, but because I volunteered at the conference, that meant I really didn't have free time Thursday. I was at the Thursday for the conference. New York is such a fascinating place, specific part of New York, because people think New York City and the Manhattan and the skyscrapers, etc. I was in Queens, which is a different part of New York. Queens is a different area. If you would like this picture was across the street from my hotel at like 11 o'clock at night. If you'd like some chicken and a psychic reading with a bagel, that's Queens at 11 p.m. where you can get all of those things at once. It's definitely, we'll just say it's an interesting place. I liked it. I enjoyed it. A lot of fun, but I did meet a lot of people who, knew me from my channel, plenty more that didn't. It was not a conference where I was very well recognized, but a handful of people, probably about 20, and there's 700 people there. So then again, I don't know this number, but I always figure for people that in any given crowd where it's a tech-centric place where maybe someone knows me, I imagine a number of them just don't say anything to me. Like, as I'm much the same, I don't, even if I kind of like, oh, I've watched that person on YouTube or whatever, I may not necessarily go out of my way to reach out to them unless there is an exception to that. There's someone who I've read their books and I get to meet. For example, I got to meet Seth Godin because he was there speaking. So he's someone, if you look him up, he's a legend in the marketing world, good writer, very thoughtful, and he was there for Q&A. But if I were to say, hey, there's Seth Godin standing in a hotel with me, I don't know that I would go out of my way to say anything. I don't know. I'm not sure where my head is at in that, but nonetheless, enough about that. We got topics to cover here. Syncthing being among the first. So that's what I did over this weekend since the last vlog Thursday, which I did the vlog from. Did I do it from here? No, I did it from the hotel room, I think. That's why I was in a hotel room Thursday. I had to think about that. Did I do it in a hotel room? The answer is yes. It all blurs together just a bit. Syncthing 2.0 is out though. And people asked about doing a video about it, but I don't know that it's worthy of a video, and you let me know, because my video covers the functional way how to use it. And there's nothing that's changed in the 2.0 in terms of function in the use of it. The back end has changed, but the front end is the same. And I think that's, to me, what matters probably more than anything else is, does it work any different? Not really. Functionally in the back end, they've switched to database type they use. So that's definitely a change to it. So let me logging into it while we talk here, so I can share the screen. But it looks the same. So the change log of the way they did the back end didn't change the front end. It doesn't change the way you do things. It's a lot of efficiency. It's a lot of fixing to do this. And I did have someone who reached out to me to let me know there was problems they had with it. And I think it is in the conversion they had to the database version. Now, someone says, hey, Tom, please do a video on how to fix it, because they moved from level DB to SQLite. And apparently, if you have indexed an incredible amount of data, that conversion has maybe some issues. Someone said it will have maybe limitations on the system it's running on to do the DB conversion, which then led to a weird response I got. Because first I was telling people, like, I can't create a video on how to fix something unless I know how to fix it and can reproduce the problem. Well, I can't reproduce the problem on my system. So, I'm not exactly sure how to make a video to fix it. I don't know what the fix is, but I do know some people had said that you could just delete the database and have it re-index everything, which takes time if you have a lot of files. But then someone says, well, I'm going to go through trouble of re-indexing and I'm just going to switch to another platform. And I'm kind of like, why? Well, because this platform broke. And I'm like, okay, but why switch to another platform if you just delete the database? As I understood, not being able to experience the problem directly, but I think there was a comment that if you, delete the old type of database and just say, just rebuild this, it will rebuild and resync. It doesn't need to resend all the files. It just needs to build the database of the files so they can be matched again and get syncing. But sometimes I guess that this is obviously some back-end engineering that went on to make this happen. And it's for it has a performance boost. They didn't do this arbitrarily. The end result of the updates to the back end of Syncthing are a improved version of Syncthing. I just always find it odd sometimes when technical people, well, if the company's going to do a heavy lift on the back end and make the product more efficient, but cause me some type of inconvenience, I am never using this product again. I'm going to a competitor's product. And I'm like, okay, just kind of a weird, it takes a while, but there's also a way to work around. Also, and by the way, the old version is not full of security holes or out of date. You can continue using it until maybe there's a better migration path from level DB to SQLite or some process for it. But I'm still happy to see Syncthing, which has been a long time favorite of mine. I've got a video I've done explaining how I use it for real-time backups, and it's just been solid for doing exactly what I want to do. And that's why I like it. I still highly recommend Syncthing. Matter of fact, for those of you that are just starting, it starts with a new database, and that might be a better thing for you because now it's going to be even faster. Moving on, a thought that me and Matt had, and I've been thinking about doing this, and I want to make this even better. We're starting to get together a content schedule because I have lots of things I'm working on, but one of the goals might be to, and I'll probably do the forums as a place for this, but put my content schedule more public. And also the forums are a place that can be interactive. So the forums are free. Anyone can read what they want out of the forums, and the forums are interactive for those of you that like to sign up for my forums. And it might be a way to drive more interaction and more engagement and people curious what I'm working on, or help shape or ask questions about the thing I'm working on. It might be another, something for else people see. Like I have a video I'm working on, and this one is a topic of today is DNS. I'm doing a DNS video on UniFi, and I have a couple odd things, and this is why I brought it up here. Let me pull up the UniFi application because I have questions for you, the audience, to try to figure out what I need to put in this video. I've got the video pretty much, I bullet point, not exactly script my videos, but I've got the script / bullet points, the topics I'm going to cover down for the video. But the part that kind of puzzles me is, what do I do, or why would you use in the Homelab? And I don't have an answer for this, so it's kind of getting it skipped. unless someone can compel me, is when you're creating DNS records in here. I don't know why. It's cool that they have, but I don't understand why they have mail records in here. It's neat that you can have this answer with mail records, but there's not a ton of, I guess if you're testing mail servers, and it probably wasn't that hard to add this in here, but if you're testing a mail server internally, not sending it out to the world, you could have your own mail lookup records and build your own mail system without having it be public. Maybe it seems like a use case, but I'm not going to talk a lot about the mail system. I'll just point out that it exists and you have a need for it. It's there. IPv6. Oh man, that was the IPv6 stuff I'll skip for IPv6 reasons. I like that they have CNAME in here. This makes a lot of people happy. I went ahead in preference for the video just to explain CNAME is not a bad thing. I don't use it often, but I decided because I was doing this with host records, I set all my host records that could have been done CNAMEs to CNAME. So I'll explain that in the video. Text records. There's some limited use case for text records inside of your own DNS. Service records, I mean, I'll mention that they exist. They're okay. I mean, they're definitely, like, if you have a need for them, you need them. And then forward domain. But mostly the things I'm going to focus on is host records and CNAMEs, and just the basics of it. It's not a particularly long video, but it'll be kind of, how does a DNS work? Make sure people understand that there's a DNS section in here for UniFi. For your DNS video, zone firewall rules. I've already done zone firewall rules, which are separate from DNS. I've got a video on zone firewall. If there's something missing from that video, let me know. I have thought about, because what seems to be the disconnect that people have is when they create different networks. And maybe, I thought I did a good job with the hierarchy. You create a zone firewall, and when you create the zones, you apply those zones to networks. So in pfSense, for example, you're going to apply a policy to a network, and then you can copy all that policy to another network. Now, there's ways to do grouping, which is not exactly the same as zones, but in many other firewalls, this is not unique at all to UniFi, and it's been around for a long time. You just create a zone with the policies you want, and then you can assign many networks to that same zone or policy. They call them zones, but they really are essentially policies, and they're applied that way. Where people really get confused, it seems like, is where do things go? Someone says, well, Tom, if your phone needs to communicate, if you consider your phone IoT, for example, and it needs to communicate with something on the server, how would you do that? There's just no way to do that. I'm like, why? And, it was kind of it was a good discussion. I think there's just some misunderstanding, but I'm like, it's, you assign, and you can assign a static IP to your phone, for example. You don't have to in UniFi, but you can. I say you don't have to because they actually let you do the phone as a device, and no matter what IP it gets, that device will have rules attached to it. But the other option will be assign it statically. And then you just create a rule that says, if you're this device, you are allowed to talk to this thing over here in that port. It's not that big of a deal to do. And I think there's a lot of confusion as to where things should go on the network. So maybe there's a video about that as well. Text records are super useful if you're doing Kubernetes, Wix external DNS, and auto-create DNS entries for applications that uses text records to assume ownership. I've seen there's definitely some kind of unique use cases for that. So I think the text record is cool. There's not a lot to talk about them. They're text records. If you know how DNS text records work, or Google it real quick, they're really simple. And I'm happy they're in there. You've been using Pi-hole for DNS, so you don't have any thoughts on the unified DNS. Yeah, I ran Pi-hole for a little while. It's novel. I just don't do it all the time. I've just gone back to simply using the unified DNS. I don't worry about it as much. People get really overly concerned. I have my upstream DNS is Quad 9. I think they do the best job being privacy focused for DNS, and it works well. Privacy, more about is probably maybe not exactly the right term. We'll say security focused DNS, privacy focused, a little different. I will admit Quad 9 does not make any type of attempt at your privacy in terms of ad tracking. Quad 9 is much more security. And occasionally if a ad tracker is malvertising something, they may get listed there. But that becomes a gray area for sure, because if you are a large ad provider and maybe your name is Google and you occasionally get malvertisers who buy ads, do you block them? I don't know. Yeah, there's DNS Filter who bought Zorus. Now, it comes down to, if you really want filtering on the endpoint from a business standpoint, I've talked about Zoros before. I've talked about having it right on the endpoint. That's where you need deeper visibility from a security management standpoint. From a home user standpoint, I honestly, I mean, uBlock works great. I'm using it now. uBlock is still one of my favorites for home use. uBlock's also convenient when you run into a website that has a stupid way of doing things. You don't have to go to the pie hole to unlock that website. One of the websites that I actually pay for, and I wish there was another website or I wouldn't pay for it. It was I think it's Onyx Off-Road is a website that I ran into this problem with. They use a stupid ad injection. It's not directly part of their login, but it's in the login cycle. So it doesn't like pass your password on there, but it's a way they're collecting statistics about the login, which of course breaks if you're using ad filtering. The login page don't work, and it drives me crazy. Why would a company do this? Well, the login page works. It won't get you to the next page. You log into them, it runs through their ad thing to collect statistics. Then it lands on the actual application page. Yeah, okay, so you use Onyx Off-Road too. Yeah. Been using Onyx to try to find a place to install a Hilltop node. Is that for I was just gonna say it was a Meshtastic node, and you answered the next one, Meshtastic node. That is cool. Yeah, that was a discussion at the hacking conference. There was someone there who worked search and rescue missions in very remote areas, wilderness areas. And they were talking about how if they could put some solar powered Meshtastics around these areas, they would be able to coordinate better with the people. And I think that's just a fun project. Yep. UniFi Network introduces network object-based policies. Yes. That's in early release right now, I think. Not out yet, but yes, they have some new fun things they're doing in that field. So I'll be doing videos on that as a topic. It is nice that they're still updating their game on all the rules. Now, another thing that people worry way too much about, and I'm trying to figure out how to put this together. Maybe I'll just do some short videos on lateral movement. There seems to be a lot of people who want to segment devices to the point where they think every single device should be on its own separate network. I mean, I don't understand the worry on that. I think it's just there's too much hype over IoT is not secure. Okay, but that's a great headline. Let's throw some fear at you. The IoT will attack your world and will destroy you. And it sounds like, ooh, doom and gloom. But the reality of it is much more unlikely. I mean, is there a flaw in my printer that's connected to the network? Probably. Someone would have to first be on the network, then attack the printer, then attack me. If they're on my network, why don't they just attack me? And the same thing with my network for media. I have a Chromecast. What is the likelihood that Google would send down a command from on high to use my Chromecast to attack my network? And people are really like sticking their Chromecast and these other devices on these other networks. I'm like, what's the statistical likelihood of this? I look at different reports. I look at security reports, and I will tell you from a day-to-day basis. I mean, if someone has one, Vlog Thursday at lawrencesystems.com, where they can point to the IoT device being the attack vector. Now, there's exceptions. If you say, Tom, firewalls are IoT devices, yes, they are. So yes, you could point to the IoT firewall, the Internet of Things firewall, which I love when they lump that in there with it. Firewall is a known device. It's not just some thing. It is a known device. So I don't know why they get lumped in there, but we look at the Mirai botnets and things like that, and they're made up of consumer firewalls very frequently. And yes, there's flaws in them. And but the over indexing on that and from people's headspace of where they think the danger in is, it was just, there's a little bit too much on that, and people worry about it too much and are spending a lot of times. You know what the good thing is? The advantage is that people learn about network security and how subnets work because of this. The number of people, and this is a common first timer question until you understand how a subnet works. They go, Tom, I've got like 8 devices. They're all IoT. I'm scared they're going to go to war with each other. How do I segment them if they're on the same network? What firewall rule will work for that? And I'm like, none. When they're on the same subnet, they do not pass through the gateway. And that is the first rabbit hole that people start going down for that aha moment of, how does subnets really work? What's a gateway? Why does it matter? How does the firewall not have control over this? Oh, what if we did port level policies? What if we did policies on the same net? How would that work? So it kind of drags people into this learning by accident. You've applied for permits with I think some of the rescue people have access because these were people that work for, I think, the forestry that are trying to do it. And they're trying to do it without funding. So I don't know what that means other than we need these things. We're the forestry people. We're going to do the thing we need to do. We're not asking for permission, or that's the impression I got from talking to people, was they're not going to ask. They're going to put them places. That was my understanding. But yeah, I imagine it may be a bureaucratic mess trying to get them. But yeah, we should chat though. I know DEF CON was a lot of fun. What about Target's hack? Target's hack was the HVAC vendor that led to network access. And it wasn't exactly their IoT network. It was their the HVAC vendor had access to the HVAC things. So when someone compromised the HVAC vendor, then they were able to pivot into Target's network. Target didn't have a separate network. It's not exactly because they're IoT. This is really a principle of least privilege. Should your external contractors use the same VPN you are using to access the company? That was definitely a no in 2025. That was a learning lesson when Target got hit. So that was more about the lack of proper granular permissions. It's also, we refer to better segmentation and position in the network doesn't grant you permission anymore. That's a zero trust model that we're moving to. So the NIST definition of zero trust is your position in network doesn't grant you privileges. You validate that each person, wherever they may be coming from, is valid to access that. And in a set up properly system, we walk through the Target attack again, and that HVAC vendor should only have granular permissions. So the attack should have never touched credit cards, but only been able to, and this is valid, if the HVAC vendor has access to do things and manipulate the HVAC system. That could have been bad because someone could have turned off the refrigerators or whatever they were attached to. I don't know if it was just refrigerators or if it was like the whole like heating, cooling and system. So someone could have turned off the air conditioning. Certainly an annoyance, definitely some losses if it's the refrigerator equipment, but not the same as losing credit cards. It wouldn't be something we'd even talk about today. By the way, fun fact here. This is one of the reminders that the company, no matter how much they have a shared responsibility matrix, which is who's responsible for what. That's something you have to do internally. You decide the HVAC vendor is external to us, so they are responsible for these functions. But when it comes to security, you are always at the head of the company and therefore responsible. And the way I can remind anyone of that is we're all talking about Target. we're not talking about, and you can find it, it's not a secret. What was the HVAC vendor's name? Not on the top of everyone's mind. Everyone calls it the Target hack, not the ABC, 123, whatever the company's name is, HVAC services. This is the Target hack. We're switching our whole stack to UniFi. Zone-based firewall, seal the deal for us. Objects are even better. Yep. Pivot. Yes. Lateral movement and pivot. Yep. You've been on pfSense after leaving Cisco since 2007. Yeah. Cisco's been having, good news is they've been finding them, but boy, they've been having some bad days lately. They had a CVSS of 10. And yeah, it's interesting. I'm happy that Cisco's finding these things internally, because Cisco's done a good job. They have their Talos group, and what the Talos group does is I picture them, and I've listened to their podcast, so there's a vision I have, or a mental model in my head of, like, they get to poke at Cisco. They seem to be able to poke at Cisco however they want. Like, it seems to be a good security group, and I think it's fun because I think Cisco is a company built by acquisitions. And so every time Cisco buys something, it's like the Talos group goes, ooh, a new thing to break. Yeah. Yeah, it was only on the it was pretty specific. It was a radius server problem on a couple specific models of their controller. And I actually like that I have a video tomorrow. I was just a guest on there, but my friends over at Blumera have their roundup. They do the Blumera briefings talking about security. We talked about this. We talked about the Cisco one, and I think we all agree that it's nice that Cisco's publishing both a patch and a workaround, because I get it. Not everybody can patch right away. Therefore, workarounds. Workarounds are like, hey, how do we mitigate this now so I can patch it over the weekend, so I can patch it when I can take this system down because it's in use. And sometimes patches take a long time to apply because words. So that's just something to consider. I don't know if this is worthy of a video, but I was playing around a little bit with this. There's a problem people run into with virtualization. I'm kind of pivoting to something that's on top of mind because I seen a screenshot over here I was taking, and we were discussing this internally, trying to sort out some performance issues with the server. And the problem is, when you have a server with multiple processors, you think, great, more processors, more cores, more power, more speed, but there's trade-offs. And those trade-offs, especially in virtualization, are, if I were to take a dual processor system and then I go into said system, actually, let's look at said system. Let's do this. So I'm sharing some visuals here for people. There we go. NUMA testing. So currently I have this system set up and we have 64 cores assigned to it. Now, the processor does not have 64 cores. This processor has how many cores total? We have 80 cores across 2 processors. So you're starting, what you're doing here, and this is multi-threaded, so there's that as well. You are splitting this between the processors. And what happens is there's a negative effect, a negative impact on the performance, especially around memory, when you cross the NUMA boundaries. And this is something that you can get a faster system by giving it less cores, because you can increase the performance. Now, the performance is, I think it was only about 20 or 30%, but it's still, you would think having all the cores assigned to this VM would give it that much more power. But there's this crossing of diminishing returns, especially when things are using all the cores, because if it's across the CPUs, it's moving this data in a less efficient way between the CPUs, outside the CPUs caching, and across the NUMA boundaries is what it's called. And when you start crossing NUMA boundaries, there's a diminishing return of performance you get, even though you have this massive amount of parallelism by having all these cores at once. I've done a video on over provisioning and shown kind of that before. I don't know if it's worthy of doing it in a slightly different way to show how one VM crossing NUMA boundaries, but it's one of those things like maybe I'll do I'm thinking about doing more shorts just to put some content out there to give people consideration of things like stuff to talk about, like lateral movement, pivoting, as someone mentioned as well, which is kind of the same. You come in and you pivot laterally across something. And these are all those little things that make up a lot of people's searches. Now, of course, there's been a lot of talk about all the searches are going away and it's just AI, but I've learned, and it's funny because it denies it. I like that it denies it. If I were to ask, and I have, ChatGPT, it knows a lot of details about me that are not anywhere outside of my videos, but it says it was not trained on my videos. But everyone kind of knows it was trained on YouTube videos because people have leaked documents about how much YouTube videos these AI systems have done. So I'm now part of the training model, I've learned, which you can ask ChatGPT weird questions and it's answered them. And I'm like, I know the only place that I've recall ever stating these things is in the video, which does get transcribed, and then that transcription has been consumed. I don't know that they actually watch the video. I'm pretty sure they're just consuming all the transcriptions for all the YouTube stuff, and it's part of the AI. So I guess if I put this data out there, it's going to eventually be an answer that's been given. I also seen, I don't know how true this is, but I do believe it to be true because of the results. There's been a lot of people talking, and I know Reddit sold data. Their parent company made a deal with the AI companies, Condé Nast Media. This was the whole, controversy Reddit went through. I think it was last year sometime. Could have been earlier this year. Things move fast, but they selling all the access to Reddit for training data. And a lot of people were upset with this. And here nor there, you post on a public forum. I don't know where that lands. The AI stuff has created a lot of complex head scratching type of things for sure. But more importantly, Reddit is not the source of truth. We'll just say that Reddit is a source of the funniest answer is usually the first answer, depending on the context of the question. So I think it's fun that there's a Google search result where it was telling people to put glue on pizza, and it wasn't edible glue. This was not too dangerous. It certainly wasn't tasty, but it wasn't dangerous either. And it's because there was a joke on Reddit about putting glue on pizza, and it was the top answer. But humans read that and said, that's the funniest answer. So that's the top answer. And I think that's what makes it kind of fun. Of the ethos of Reddit. I go there to see a funny picture. I really go there, though, to see the top comment because someone has the exact right amount of snark that is the right answer. Now, for technical things, it's just a leaning into more accurate answers getting upvoted, but there's certainly a number of them where the answer is meant to be funny, tongue-in-cheek, or something along those lines, which context matters, and it doesn't necessarily translate as well when the AI models consume this context. Therefore, that is the answer they give as well. Figure out why Reddit things get the most votes, and you'll figure out the answer to universe. I've been on Reddit since the narwhals bacon at midnight, and I don't know. I just know I've been part of Reddit for that long. And if you know what that means, you've been on Reddit as long as I have, and your hair is gray probably. The people that go, the narwhals baking at midnight make no sense to me. You're probably new to Reddit. So that's, I've been around it for a minute. But hey, that's the thing. A discussion I had with numerous people, and I think this is going to be a common trend that we start seeing more of. And I think we are seeing it, especially right here, right now, where people are looking for more real and human connection and less relying on AI, because the real human connection part is, I think, an important aspect. And there's people who maybe enjoy scrolling through whatever. I call it the brain rot content and the infinite scroll feed of slop. And there's people who like that. I'm sure that's fine. That's nothing I'm complaining about here. But the people that are in when I'm at the conference, it was much more direct, like people looking for and building feeds of real people doing things, not AI generated versions of stuff. I think AI is pushing more of that. Um, it is where I think the AI is going to push people to not search, but seek out going, this person puts out real content. They're a real human. I'll watch them on a live stream on Thursday or whatever that is. Wendell's talked about this of Level One Techs. He talked about this a year ago, and I think we're seeing it more. People are looking for the messenger who brings them the message. They're not just looking for the message, not just searching for the answer. They realize the answer may be SEO slop driven garbage and not exactly what they're looking for, not helpful, not really doing anything more than wasting their time. But they look for the messenger who will deliver them a message they want. They know if they follow Wendell from Level One Techs, his coverage is how it is for new products. He does accurate videos on things. You build levels of trust with these people, and I think that's where the opportunity still is. I keep hearing, and maybe I'm wrong, but I keep hearing, oh, it's going to end all the creators. We can just create a bot that looks like the creator. We can remake using tools like 11 Lab, the creator's voice. We've already consumed enough of their content with the YouTube algorithm, and we stuffed it into this training model so it approximates them. But I don't think it's real, and I don't think that's what people really want. That is what someone building a company looking to get fund would definitely say those words out loud, because they want money to build it. And people who, go, oh, if I could pay less humans and I can have the same amount of content and look at all these humans, they seem popular. What if I can make fake versions of those humans? I don't know. Yeah. And this is it too. There's been a lot of people who have consulted with AI who has not given them proper advice. And there's people who put themselves into a level of psychosis with thinking AI is real. And I think it takes, if you have someone who's already starting out from a position that they're stressed, they're having some issue that would probably be best sorted out by talking to another human or maybe some type of therapist, or in extreme cases, there are lots of medications that can help people who are struggling things mentally. I think AI becomes a way to set them off on it, and it doesn't necessarily put them on the right journey. There's going to be someone claiming AI helped them and cured them of their loneliness or whatever. But in the big picture, it's a very not trustworthy way to do that, especially when it can hallucinate and send you down the wrong path. And if you're someone who's already trying to deal with the realities around you, this doesn't necessarily seem like a good thing. I'm almost finished applying for a job, and I have to get fingerprints to verify I'm still me and haven't been replaced. Yes. My joke about a year ago, I was on I don't remember what podcast I was on, but I got everyone laughing. We were talking about, and this is obviously a really big issue right now with people posing as someone else in order to get a job. North Korea's become quite popular on this particular tactic. We've seen laptop farms, as we call them, but there's a lot of issues around the, validating with remote workers that they're actually who they say they are, that they are from the country they say they are, etc. But in the early days, especially when people were using some of that video masking feature, I was like, there's a real fun workaround. You just got to tell them to turn their head and cough. And it turns out it was part of a news article that said that. I was like, it was just kind of a funny thing, because when you would turn your head, the masking part wouldn't line up with the face anymore. It would do it a little bit, but if they coughed, they did some type of fast action, the masking would, and you could go, aha, it's a fake person. So there's definitely a lot of, okay, so you got a military background, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff going there. More of a strange question. Now you preach don't route storage, but how do your VMs that you have Docker access on NFS? 2 NICs, 1 storage network, or do you expose a share on regular network? Production situations or properly set up situations definitely have a separate mount on a separate network interface. So you'll see that my pull up one of the VMs here. It should be on. This is not Docker specifically, but the concept is exactly the same. Make it bigger, make it easy to see. Tom LAN, where things are, and storage network, where the storage talks. Same concept. This happens to be my XO server, but Docker, insert name of whatever that needs to access things across storage. This is this easy solution. Add it on a network interface. It's really easy to do. Just tie it together. And not to mention, more than likely, if you're using some type of hypervisor, Proxmox, XCP-ng, etc., you probably have a storage network that you've already attached it to if you're doing good storage design. So that network interface already exists on the host. You just have to also expose it there. Maybe you go, well, I don't want the host and the VMs to have the same storage interface. Well, then create another one. It's, that's not a big deal to do. Now, people, and this is where at some point I asked someone, like, is this really the threat model you're worried against? Someone says, but Tom, you're using NFS, and NFS, you should be using, full authentication. You're just using IP filtering. And I'm like, look, I don't really think someone's going to, and maybe your threat model is different than mine, but this is my threat model. I don't think anyone's going to get on my network, impersonate my server that has access. Like, for example, this IP address, 192.168.20.21, has access to my backups. Someone would have to get on my network, knock this offline, because if you have an IP conflict, pretend to be 192.168.20.21, and then pivot to my backups. And then from there, they could do whatever they have access to do. By the way, if you were to do that, let's just walk through that. What would happen if you were on my network? You've now figured out where my backups live. You know the IP address you need to spoof. You also have to know the IP address this connects to. So let's say you had both of those pieces of information. Then you've deleted my backups. Well, first, I'm going to have an alert that you are on my network because you did some flip-flop stuff here in my NetAlert X, as what I've shown how to use before. There's an easy tool for that. You're someone on a network, so that's weird. Second, you've taken out my XO. That would send a notice that that's down. Okay, so there's a problem. Next, if I did figure out you did it, snapshots are going on all the time with my TrueNAS. So I could revert back to a snapshot. And on top of those snapshots, I have offsite backup that those get sent to. So now I've got 2 extra copies of all the data that you tried to delete. So I could always revert back to snapshot, obviously clean the network, figure out how someone got there. But you kind of walk through that scenario of the challenges and hurdles I've put in place. And you go, are those really how someone would attack me? Or since we had LTT and Linus Tech Tips brought up, how would they really attack you? They'd send you a phishing link that your sales guy would click on. That's the reality. It is, hold on. My favorite meme that always represents this. I think people already know where I'm going with it. You have all the armor. You've got everything. You're a ready soldier, and someone sticks an arrow through your visor. They sent you a phishing email. So yeah, that's the thing. I always, bring people back. What is your threat model? What is your risk tolerance? If you happen to, as someone mentioned, working for the military, if you're in the military and you're set to protect military secrets or some thing that other adversaries would like to have, and you're fending off nation state level adversaries, oh yeah, there's a complete, much more sophisticated level of attack that could be performed against you. Those are different threat models. If I am teaching people how to do normal network security, not how do I protect against nation states. Now, there's some principles that are going to cross over and apply, but at some point, an easy example here. I live in a normal house. I do not live in a bank vault. But if I were a person of, you look at the security of people who are extremely wealthy, especially if they built that wealth in a nefarious way, and they may live in a completely guarded shack. If you don't live in a guarded shack, well, then it's very different. It comes down to what's your threat model. How to separate true testing Homelab kind of video. I did a whole lab video already. So yes, my lab video covers that essentially. Have you heard of Bloodhound? Yes, I have. John Henn did a video. It's powerful for finding vulnerabilities. Yeah, Bloodhound's been around for a long time. Definitely cool stuff. Yeah, the ultra wealthy, the especially nefarious ones, they live on an island and they make sure they have a perimeter around them so they can see anyone approaching. So yeah. Even MS is broken SSD and HE storage. I don't know. Have backups. That's all you can really do. I realize that there is a lot of problems with some of the. I didn't even see. I seen the headlines, but yeah, have backups. That's all you can do. Use ZFS for those backups. I mean, there's other file systems. I mean, you could say, Tom, I've outgrown ZFS. I'm using Ceph because I have 37 petabytes I manage, and that's a statement I know from someone. There's definitely some things larger than that, but generally speaking, for probably the audience listening, ZFS and a backup copy of all the things you have on ZFS, because there's a lot of people that seem to have fallen into this hard, fast rule. They're like, Tom, your 3-2-1 backup strategy is completely flawed because you have ZFS replicated as ZFS. This is breaking it. You're not telling me how to do proper backups if you do that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, those are proper backups. I know like people love the multiple media types. Unfortunately, that's not always, it's not unfortunate. It's just the way it is right now. It doesn't absolutely have to be. So yes. What's the news on Syncthing? I mentioned it earlier, so you can rewind to the beginning, but Syncthing has moved over to 2.0, which is no functional change for those of you using it on the front end. And that's good because my videos are now the same, but it is a back-end change to a faster way to index files and a faster database method. So too long, didn't read. Faster database. You can look up Syncthing 2.0 release and read the actual details. Why does China keep getting access? Look, the same reason Microsoft has been outsourcing all their stuff for the Department of Defense. They are outsourcing that to China. They were also outsourcing SharePoint support to China. They also seem to have omitted some of this information. ProPublica has dug it up. There's a lot of articles on it. It's been amusing in a sad way. I'm not laughing at security. It's like, it's just better than crying to make a joke about it. And there's someone who posted I replied to one of my LinkedIn comments. It's just said, that's because capitalism is more important than security. End of story. It is more important that we make more money than we secure things better. If we spent more time and more money on security, we would make less money. Therefore, we're going to spend as much as we think is valid for risk tolerance. So, yeah. So because, Microsoft has decided that the security of SharePoint, because by the way, roughly 400 organizations were attacked through the SharePoint recent vulnerability. And many of these organizations are government ones as well. There are overseas governments that use it. And speculatively, Microsoft's going, I wonder how, because it's been linked back to Chinese state actors. I wonder how these Chinese state actors had early access to this. How were they exploiting it? I don't understand. It could be because we outsourced this development of this to China, but I don't know if that's really it. I don't know if that's exactly the answer. But there's a chance that could also be true. and then you're linking, well, why are they outsourcing to China? I mean, don't we have people here in the United States? Yeah, but they want more money and we'd make less money. I mean, Microsoft did hit a $4 trillion market cap. I don't think they sustained it, but they hit it, so outsourcing everything to our adversaries for less money. It's a thing. Well, to say it's a thing that happened. But don't worry, Microsoft says it's fine. Let me zoom in on this and share it. It's fine. We had escorts. Yes, Microsoft says we use escorts. What an escort is, maybe there's more than one definition of this, but in the context of this, it's fine we use escorts, is Microsoft had supervisors who watched what the support did. Now, these supervisors, unfortunately, that would watch these Chinese support technicians work on Department of Defense, they were escorting them by showing them how to do things. So they would tell the escort to put a command in. Now, these escorts are not particularly well trained, it turned out. Matter of fact, I believe they were minimum wage, or a little more than minimum wage, but not much more minimum wage. So yeah, we outsourced the labor, and we had someone who was authorized to supervise them, but who's not actually skilled enough to do it. Read all the ProPublica. Just type in ProPublica Microsoft, and you're just like, wow. You're just like there's three big stories that are broke out of this, and ProPublica's done a good job. They broke the first story, about a week later the second one, and now a third. I think that was yesterday. So yeah, and of course, me being me, I post a lot of snark on LinkedIn. So this is my post, and I always make memes on Microsoft to make fun of them. And I mean, once I read, it's fine we use escorts. That's how we in security, we may refer to this as a compensating control, where we have a security thing we're trying to mitigate. So we have a compensating control to keep this thing secure. And Microsoft uses escorts as a compensating control. Why not? That's where we are today, folks. I'm still working on what I'm going to do. Is I've been relaxing a bit more here in August, September. Sorry for the slower video releases. But I definitely am thinking about starting up a dedicated security podcast. Maybe I'll have a few friends on, but yes, definitely on my list is to do this, because I love talking about security. I love adding the snark and fun. I am working on as well, because I've been posting on LinkedIn, and I built up a following there. And I also want to start blogging again on the topics I cover on LinkedIn. They're separate than the topics I cover in my video, because they're more security related. Sometimes they're business related. Where's the other one? If you go, my LinkedIn's all public. I don't set anything to private anyways. If anyone wants to look at this, I don't know how LinkedIn's policy is. I mean, I have a sign in for LinkedIn, but I post once or twice a week on LinkedIn. I posted the other day, and we're going to wind this down in a few minutes because I have to go get my friend Brett. I'm going to be at the IT&AD event tonight. I have to go to a physical in-person event where there's not people who are AI. That's why I'm going. But this is my LinkedIn content strategy. Someone says, how do you do it? And I said, it's really easy. You do a funny meme, you throw some intellectual thoughts in the text, and you work on effectiveness and engagement. It's a simple strategy. I've explained this to, a lot of my friends who are interested in doing this. I'm very transparent with any of the things that I do, and making sure that if anyone's interested, I will happily share strategies or explain how I do something. I am someone who doesn't just believe in open source in terms of like the software concept of open source, but also however I do things. This is my process. This is my strategy. It's not a secret how I run my business or what tools I use for it in the processes around it. I don't see them as anything to be a secret. I figure the more we share in the same way with software, it's invites the open source people who are also like-minded to share as well, and we build better systems from it, not just software, as I said, but in the greater picture of business systems and things like that. That's why I started posting on LinkedIn. No, different Brett. He thinks it's great. He is from Texas, and Brett said a water balloon fight would be fun. Yes. Next time you're up there, you got to go see. Yes, you got to come hang out with Bob Waltenspiel. So uh, if you can spell Wattenspiel, people can Google up who Bob is. He's an interesting guy. Dakota knows him because he runs the IT in the D podcast. IT in the D is a physical in-person meetup for tech nerds in the Detroit area. We meet once a month. There's no agenda. Actually, their agenda loosely is networking one beer at a time. There's no real there's not a call to action. There's no elevator pitch of, hi, I do these things. It's just a bunch of people to come out and say hi to each other with no agenda. So kind of fun. How did you make the Discord chat come into this chat? Which tool? I don't make the Discord chat come in here, so I have no idea. There might be a way to do it, but I don't know how to do it. I'm not something I know in particular. So bringing in a Discord chat. Yeah, Raid Owl is hyper focused on hyper tiny home labs. Yeah, there's trends and fun things. I think the small home lab stuff, specifically the low wattage, appeals to a lot of people, especially if they don't have a larger space. Not everyone has room for a full rack of servers. So how overkill is full IAC to home lab, as in everything is Terraform and Ansible? I don't think it's a problem. It's a fun, home lab is really about your goals. Home lab is a very broad topic. There's people who go, I want to learn network engineering. So I built a home lab and built advanced networking things. I know a lot of software developers who build a home lab because they want to have really like better access to the hardware that they are developing on, but they don't need anything quite as advanced. They can actually get away with much less of that and focus on developing software, writing code, etc. But then there's people who want to level up their skills. So absolutely, I encourage it. There's people who spend a lot of time, like I don't use Kubernetes in my home lab. I just don't need the complexity, which seems to be a statement that bothers people that I'm not using Kubernetes. The Kubernetes people are very passionate. If they find out you are not, they must convert you to also be a Kubernetes user. I feel, I don't know. I didn't read the terms and conditions of Kubernetes. Maybe it's in there. And because I did not start using it, I didn't agree to become an evangelist for Kubernetes. But it perfectly fine if you are. I encourage and preach it to those who like to use it. I have no problem with that. So yeah, you build your home lab to the complexity that interests you, the part that is, makes your brain go and keeps you that sense, gives you that sense of discovery. I think that's where it's, the right level. So the right level is not the same for everybody. It's wherever your sense of discovery and where your curiosity takes you. Like I don't really have I have anything more than a lab where I run Windows. I run Windows on my machine that ingests my media. So that does count as a Windows machine, but it's not part of my lab. And if I didn't, as a matter of fact, if I was not a YouTube or content creator, I don't really like the word influencer because it has its own negative and connotation with it. But because I create media, I feel I have to use a little bit of Windows. If I didn't, though, if I was someone who was just doing it for the sake of doing it, just for learning and on my own, which there was a time in my life I was doing that, I would probably not touch Windows at all. So, in word to the wise, don't take on a challenge that would discourage you from the home lab. So if you find something that you've set the goal too far that you won't quite get to, that can be a discouraging time to work in the home lab. So make sure you chunk this up in whatever your willingness to overcome an obstacle is. Don't start with assembly language. We work our way back in programming, and don't start at Kubernetes or Terraform or any of the others. I mean, probably not the first, but then again, maybe some people, I don't know. I've seen people start at the hard because that's their drive. Their drive is to solve the hard problem first. And hey, awesome. I can relate to that. It's great. A little question. What would this little question be? Afterwards, Kubernetes still is, Docker, etc. You need Kubernetes. First try Docker Swarm, way easier, no crazy RAM and CPU requirements. Yes. Hey, message me sometime. We can exchange conference notes. Yeah, K8's at home. Kind of wild, but people do it. You see UniFi updated network. How would you compare with pfSense? I might do an updated video on this. Here's the thing. I did the UniFi versus pfSense video about a year ago. And there's been a lot of changes since Network 9 came out, and then a lot more changes on the way. UniFi now has a more in-depth feature set than they had. And what makes the video kind of weird for me to do is because there's not much change in pfSense. People are complaining I'm not doing enough pfSense videos, but I'm like, what do you want me to do? The same one again? Because the OpenVPN video is the same today as it was several years ago, because OpenVPN is the same over the last few years. Same with the WireGuard, same with HA proxy or insert name, the firewall rules. They've like the big change they made in the last couple of years in pfSense is the ability to copy a rule and the ability to drag a rule. Doesn't really change my video on firewall rules. Do I do another video where I change the visual for how I copied a rule? I don't know. That's part of the reason I've done less videos on it. So the video is probably valid because UniFi is caught up with many of the pfSense features, and pfSense is been keeping up to date, but they're not making big sweeping changes. Therefore, there's less to talk about. I've been waiting to really talk about the new version of pfSense 2.8 I mentioned, and now the 25 versions come out, but I didn't jump on the video right away because the changes are pretty minimal. It's a good change. There's good updates in there. You should update, but they're still minimal. They're not, sweeping changes. As basically I say, there's not a lot in their errata. Like they moved to a different DHCP server. Functionally, not a major difference, but there's definitely some differences in it. Good, but that's. Someone even said that on one of the videos. They seemed upset I did the video. I did the video on PSS 2.8, and someone in all caps, I think they typed "big nothing burger," and I'm like, I don't know. What do you want me to do? I'm just covering the news here, buddy. Fun stuff. I replaced the video I just did on the network file manager is a replacement video for the one I did a year ago because it works differently. I do that from time to time. I will make a new video. I can't make them all at once. There's just too many to make, but I do try to replace older ones if there's a drastic change. To me, a drastic change in pfSense, like my old pfSense video versus the new one. Yeah, the being able to drag a firewall rule in an easier way is a change, but it doesn't change too much to the rule making. So I don't know. No, I don't do Linux distro videos. It's just not my thing. Other people do that. Other people are better at it. I don't distro hop. I don't think about distros that much. I run Debian. I run Pop! OS on my desktop because it worked. As a matter of fact, I now have an Ubuntu desktop and a Pop! OS desktop. I am going to try loading Pop! OS on my framework because I've had problems with DaVinci Resolve on that particular laptop. And I don't know yet until I load another operating system what those problems are. So that's on my to-do list, is to swap the OS, go back and forth, and maybe do a video about it. But it's really not my focus. I like an operating system that is stable and has good security updates, which pretty much leads me to Linux, because Microsoft provides a absolutely horrific user experience. And yeah, nothing great about it. Nothing great about the Microsoft world. They just, man, I mean, I do have a gaming system that runs Windows, and I know if it wasn't for the anti-cheat, I would just wipe it and put Linux on it. But the anti-cheat stuff, a couple of games require that. And I look forward to a day when that's not the issue. I actually have the 8300, but if you haven't gotten enough out of it yet, replaced with the enterprise firewall from UniFi. Anyway, thank you for your response. Yeah. I mean, 1800 is good. There's not anything wrong with that one. And we still have clients running pfSense. I don't see any problem to continue on with pfSense, but there is a nicety, and this is why a lot of people, UniFi has become extremely popular because they looked around and they said, it seems like all these people working in tech have a couple requirements that are not too hard to meet. I mean, it's impossible for companies like Cisco to even consider this as a thought. This is not even entering the mind of Fortinet. There's no way Palo Alto would do this. They decided maybe you, the people, would like to have a device you buy that doesn't have a subscription, that you can even host parts of it locally, and the new UniFi OS server, and that doesn't just turn into a pumpkin at midnight if you don't keep giving them money. Oh, and then you don't like resellers because their value-added reseller market doesn't add any value. It just seems to add cost and aggravation to your purchasing. You would like direct sales? We can do that. And UniFi has now built a company that is worth like $25 billion, according to their market cap, which I know is speculative. I don't look what they're at today, but it's crazy that I can't name the competitor to UniFi that's playing the same game in the same way. UniFi is just, it's like, here's an idea. UniFi gets brought up not just by me, but by a lot of people because of their popularity, because of the things I just mentioned. So whenever I hear a company tell me they're going to compete with UniFi, first I get excited because I think there's plenty of room in the market to compete. But then I see how they compete, and they're like, we're going to stick it in the cloud. And I'm like, why? You're not going to give people a locally hosted option? No. And I'm like, okay, then how are you competing with them? We're going to have a better reseller program because they don't have one. Oh, well, I think people like the fact that they don't have a reseller program, but there's some people that don't. And so, yeah. Please UniFi better custom QoS. I switch only after do custom QoS like I can on pfSense and MikroTik. They're getting better at it. I mean, they have a pretty solid QoS system, but I don't think QoS is something I spent much time with in pfSense. I don't think I have it set up for the majority of clients either. So I don't know. Hey, someone just messaged me. And my answer is yes. Someone asked me if I'm going to IT&D, which I have to leave in a few minutes for. What are your thoughts on cloud repatriation, moving from cloud on-prem? It's really a trend in corporate world. On a personal level, it sure a trend seems. Yes. There's not enough companies because of the way companies work. They don't always make this public, but yes, it's absolutely a thing. I'm also biased because I talk about it. Therefore, people hire me to do it. I see more of it, so I can't answer to the statistical trend of all large companies, but I can tell you the people who reach out to me, and these are big companies and some of them are publicly traded, are repatriating, or sometimes in this case, their expansion plans are all local, not cloud. So yes, definitely a thing. 37 Signals has done a wonderful write-up on it. So if you look up 37 Signals and getting out of the cloud, they've documented their journey of getting it out of the cloud. What am I playing these days? I got to finish Ghost of Tsushima, but I'm open to other ideas and suggestions for games. I'll be finishing that one. I know I wanted to play Cyberpunk, but I'm like, if someone says, "Hey Tom, this is a game to play with people," I like looking for games to play with people. And my challenge, especially because it's summer, is I like being outside, so I don't play as many games, especially with winter. Winter is coming. I will definitely be more open to suggestions to games to play with other people. I'm a social nerd, and social nerd is probably a better way to put it. I'm not extroverted exactly, where I want to talk to strangers, but I do like to talk to people about nerd things. So nerd things can be games. And if there's a fellow nerd, I spend a lot of time talking to my fellow nerds. They're always around the topics that I'm passionate about, which that's what nerds do. We get passionate about stuff. And yes, Heretic and Hexen is really good. Well, that sounds interesting. Are they the old ones or the new ones? I've heard of Battlefield looks good, so yeah. Definitely something I'm thinking about. Thinking about playing the games anti-cheat, so I dual boot and only use Windows for software games that don't work on Linux. Yeah, haven't booted Windows in months. I know that's kind of the solution there. But all right, I have to go pick up my friend, and we're headed to the IT Nitty event. So I have to physically be somewhere else, which means I'm going to end this podcast here, or not podcast, vlog. Then we'll go vlog. But thank you, all of you, for making this great. I really enjoy answering all the questions. It's a lot of fun. You can always hit me up in the forums. As I mentioned earlier, you can find all my social contacts on lawrencesystems.com. I like to repeat that for anyone who just wants to reach out, and you'll be shocked at how many people I reply to. I'm also available at Vlog Thursday for questions about the vlog or whatever you want to talk about. Vlog Thursday at lawrencesystems.com. Same thing. I reply a lot. So feel free to reach out if you have some type of question. If you're looking for technical support, the forums are a place for that. If you're looking to say hi, the socials are good for that. And yeah, all the links are there. All the game stuff is there. If you want to even, connect with me on the game stuff and go from there. All right, everyone have fun and take care.